Blog Talk Radio.
Bichamo Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut Neye Ujirada Midinde Ujirafo Kwesi Radnem Pata Akan Akwamumai Marukai TV Mu Ojirafo. That means greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut people, meaning African Black people. Today is Ojira Day, Purification Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Radnem Pata Akan. Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Ojira Mine Mu within Ojira Mine, the purified nation, Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you for tuning into this special broadcast of Ojira. We wanted to do a specific piece dealing with the KRADA, the soul day of Okofo Yaw, warrior Yaw, also called Nat Turner. He was born on October 2nd in 1800, but that was actually a Yawda, which is a Thursday, and the manner in which we approach the KRADA process, the soul name process, when we have the day of the year come around, if it doesn't fall on the specific day, so October 2nd was actually Friday of FIDA this year, and our year, of course, began September 23rd. This is our year 13,016. So since that day didn't fall on a Yawda, we wait until the very next Yawda Thursday to acknowledge the KRADA, the soul day of the individual. So we want to get into this information. Before that, we want to place some links in the chat room for those who are new to the broadcast. Typically, what we have are 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. On Yawda, Monday nights, we have Akan Nana Song, ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion. And we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion. Number 1, of course, because we are Akan. Number 2, because there is misinformation being propagated about Akan culture and philosophy, ancestral religion, cosmology, and so forth. So we give proper information, accurate information about the nature of Nyamewa and Nyame, the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father, Supreme Being, the Obosom, the forces in nature, the spirits animating all of creation, the divine forces in nature, the so-called goddesses and gods, the male and female divine spirit forces in creation, Obosom, and of course the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our direct blood circle called the Nananu Samanfo. So we deal with the nature and function of these forces in creation and our direct blood ancestresses and ancestors, giving proper information. We also show our direct descent from ancient Khanat, which is a title of ancient Nubia. Our people originating in Khanat, that region of Nubia, migrating west a couple of thousand years ago to reestablish the empire Khanat or Ghana in the western part of the continent. About 1,000 years after that, some of our people migrated further south to reestablish Khanat or Akana civilization in the regions of what is today's Ghana and Ivory Coast. And then a few hundred years after that, some of our people were forced from those regions into North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kessier, the Great, versus the enslavement era. And this is how Akan people coming from ancient Khanat, Nubia, ended up in West Afuraitkaitnut, but then ultimately some of us in the Western Hemisphere. So there's a direct migratory and forced migratory pattern that can be shown, but there's also a cultural pattern that can be shown in that migration and forced migration. A spiritual culture as well. So we go into detail talking about ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion on Yawda on Monday night. On Tuesday nights, we have Ojira, which means purification. Ojira also means the celebration of purification. And we deal with Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut ancestral religion in general, where we talk about purification of culture, purification of cosmology, the understanding of ancestral religion and how it impacts every aspect of our lives. So we read from texts from ancient Kemet, clarifying these concepts, talking about the nature and function of the divinities, the ancestors in relationship to us, animal totems, ritual practices, divination, and so forth, various things dealing with ancestral culture and religion. Our divine function in creation, the nature of our krawa, our soul, our divine consciousness, and its relation to our divine function in creation, divine order being comprised of divine law or love and divine hate. So we go into detail about numerous things in the ODWIRA broadcast. And of course, that's on Tuesday night, Benada, Abenada. On Wednesday nights, Awukuda or Akuada. We have Egua Marketplace Day, where we typically have individuals come on to talk about their Afuraitkaitnut businesses, organizations, and institutions. Those who are serving the Afuraitkaitnut or African Black community in a positive capacity, who maintain their ancestral religious values in the process, and whose ancestral religious values inform their service to the community. So we've had a number of individuals come onto the show and talk about their businesses, organizations, institutions, how they began that process, how they made their journey to ancestral culture and religion, and how it informs their service to the community. So when you look on our OCOM Economic Development page, and we'll put a link to that in the chat room right now, you will see that we have a list of those businesses, organizations, and institutions, and this list is an ever-growing list, so continue to check that page. We have the list of those businesses, their links to their direct website, also the link to their interviews that they did with us on the Egua Marketplace show. So, 2-hour interviews where you can sit and listen to when they sat with us and talked about their businesses, organizations, institutions, and their philosophy. In that process, we published the OCOM Economic Development Model, and that is an economic development model and approach to economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values and culture. So you can go to the OCOM Economic Development Model page. You can download that model. You can also download it's a free download, of course. You can also download the 4-part series that we did on the OCOM Economic Development Model, dissecting that model, showing how it impacts every aspect of our lives and its various applications. We also have the video of Egua Kudi, which is economic warfare. And then we also have No Kwarefo Ne Amamre, self-employment and ancestral culture. So you can download those videos as well as the links to the organizations, institutions, businesses, and so forth that we have been supporting as a community. As part of the OCOM Economic Development Model, we have the strategy, which is to starve the beast and feed the pride. That means we make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds we would have potentially wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We reallocate those funds away from those white businesses and redirect them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. We are targeting one Afuraitkaitnut African Black business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks. As a community, we have been doing this since February, target one per week for capital infusion at an optimal level. So therefore, when you starve the beast and feed the pride, when one person takes the $10 or $15 they would have wasted at a white business, white restaurant, Chipotle or Walmart or whatever business you would have wasted the funds at, and you starve that white beast and feed the pride, reallocate that $15 away from the white business and support a Black-owned business, organization, or institution for one of the week, then that's a $15 infusion of capital. When 1,000 of our people engage in that process on the same week, then that's a $15,000 infusion of capital for one Black business, organization, or institution in the course of 7 days. And that allows the business, organization, or institution to remain open, to expand their services and their product lines for us serve us at a greater capacity. It allows them to hire people within the community so that they can expand their services to us, and also our people have employment within Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut business, so it's something of value. It's a win-win situation, of course. If we do not engage in this process, then by default, we are leaving that $15,000 in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring, and therefore we are financing our own oppression. It is said that there are about 2 million black people unemployed in this country. At the same time, there are 1.9 million, 2 million black businesses in this country. If every black business hired one black person, of course, the unemployment rate would disappear, would drop to zero. That is easily achieved. We spend over $1 trillion in the black community in the course of a year. 950 billion plus of that goes to white businesses, organizations, and institutions. And then the $5+ billion remains in our hands. We can simply reallocate all those hundreds of billions of dollars that we typically waste with our enemies and reallocate them, spend them with the black businesses, organizations, and institutions. And therefore, our institutions will expand, and the white businesses that we were giving those hundreds of billions of dollars to will simply collapse. And that's exactly what should happen. And we can reallocate those dollars to our people and therefore employ all of our people, as well as spur entrepreneurship within our community. So this is what we're dealing with on Egua Marketplace Day. So these are the 3 broadcasts we have on a weekly basis. Today is a special broadcast because we wanted to do this broadcast on Yawda on Thursday, because this is the KRADA, or Soul Day, of Okofo Yaw, warrior Yaw, Nat Turner. This is the day of the week upon which he was born. So we wanted to do it on Yawda. So, but before we get to that, we just also want to mention an announcement. Coming up next week is our first annual Hoodoo Mine Nation Festival. This is going to, of course, this is a yearly festival. This is the first annual festival. We're dealing with Hoodoo, the Akan Ancestry religion in North America. So we're going to have an all-day festival from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. in Washington, D.C. We'll put the link to our Hoodoo Mine page. We will have in Egua a marketplace. There'll be a number of vendors selling natural products, handmade products that include artwork, that includes cultural artwork, that includes natural soaps, shea butter, oils, various natural products, hair care products, and so forth, herbs, natural medicine, clothing, handmade, a number of different things, live food, publications, written by authors, self-published books, and so forth. We will have a number of individuals in our marketplace. It's a free event for Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut people and Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut people only. We're going to put the link in the chat room right now. If you're on the phone line, it is the Hoodoo Mine page on our website, ODWIRA.com. We also have a Hoodoo Mine page on Facebook. So, and as we go along, we'll talk about some of that information. There will be presentations by different authors as well as healers. So we will have, for example, we will be doing a presentation on Hoodoo, the Akan Ancestry religion in North America. Of course, we published our book, Hoodoo People, Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, Africans in North America, Akan, custodians of Hoodoo from ancient Hoodoo Nduru land, Khanit, Nubia, proving that the term Hoodoo comes from the Akan term Ndu, which means medicine. It means root medicine from roots, trees, stalks, and so forth. It also means to conjure, and this is why Hoodoo in North America means root work, root doctoring, root medicine, but it also means to conjure. We also show that that same term, Ndu, is found in ancient Kamit and Khanit, meaning the exact same thing with regard to medicine, root work, and so forth, conjuring. It is also ritual offering to the deities and so forth. It also has to do with the name one of the titles of ancient Nubia, which is called the Udu land, and the people called the Udu people. So that exact same term for the land and for the people and for root work, root medicine, conjuring, and so forth from ancient Khanat was carried with our people to the western part of the continent in the Empire of Khanat and regions of Akan civilization and into North America, the same terms unchanged for thousands of years. It would only be later on that the term hoodoo became used as a general generic term for quote-unquote African religion or ancestral religion or spirituality or quote-unquote black magic, or the whites and their offspring would seek to denigrate the term and say it was something evil and so forth because we utilize our ancestral religions to crush them and massacre them, as we will talk about tonight. So in our book, Hoodoo People, we deal with that, and we will be doing a presentation on that. Then we will also have a presentation by Ama Asase Adje of Asase Hills, dealing with natural medicine, herbs. She creates her own tinctures to heal, as well as a number of other products that she creates and has produced and so forth. So she will be doing a presentation. We will also have Kamal Makesi Suhuti, who published the book, How to Make a Negro Christian, showing how the whites and their offspring, after the uprising and the war waged by Okofo Yaw, Nat Turner, the whites and their offspring were so shook and so fearful of what took place that they began to move in a very methodical fashion to introduce Christianity to our people, force that foolishness to our people, create an entire catechism and methodology to brainwash our people with Christianity for the purpose of making our people docile slaves mentally, because they saw that our people were rising up and massacring the whites and their offspring. So that was one of their strategies. They also were forced into the position of abolition, forced into the position of repatriation and establishing the American Colonization Society and things like that, establishing Liberia and Sierra Leone and so forth. Those were outgrowths of our people waging war in many areas. Gabriel Prosser, so-called Okumpo Kwabena, so-called Denmark Vesey, David Walker, a number of different individuals waging war against the whites and their offspring. And because of their fear that we will continue to wage war and massacre all of them, they began to scramble and figure out ways to either get us out of the country and recolonize us in colonies on the continent, or try to enslave the minds of our people through Christianity. So he will be dealing with that in that publication. So we will be posting the itinerary of the event and the presenters and so forth on the Hoodoo Mind page. So please continue to share that page. We have space for a couple of more vendors. You can go to the Hoodoo Mind page and fill out the vendor registration application. We have about 2 more spaces left. A table is $25. We've supplied a 6-foot table and 2 chairs. And we also have, tomorrow is the deadline for submitting your ads, JPEG files for ads for our Hoodoo Mind Hoodoo Mind journal, a journal which will be given out for free to everyone who attends the event. We will have articles about hoodoo, ancestral culture, religion, and so forth, and natural healing and so forth. But also in that journal will be ads from businesses, organizations, and institutions taking part, as well as those who place ads, and also personal ads as well that are supportive of the culture. So if you would like to place an ad in our journal, then your business, organization, or institution will be in the hands of everyone who comes to the event, but exponentially thousands of people, because when they carry that journal out back to their places of residence and share with their friends, co-workers, family, and so forth, it will exponentially get to thousands of our people. Plus, we will have an online version, an ebook version of the journal, which will be permanently posted on our Hoodoo Mind page, and therefore thousands of people will see that consistently on a regular basis from that point on. So the 1/4 page is $25 for 1/4 page ad. It's an 8.5 by 11 size, magazine size journal. 1/4 page is $25 for 1/4 page ad. A half page ad is $35. A full page ad is $50. So all of the information is on the Hoodoo Mind page. We place the link in the chat. Okay, so what we're going to do right now, we're going to put the link for a couple of articles. The Obosom article dealing with Nana Yaw. We're going to put that in the chat room that we're going to deal with. And then also, we will place the link for the Hoodoo Mind publication. The Hoodoo People publication. And that is also on our separate Hoodoo page. And that information is up there now. So, let me just put that in there right quick, finish that up. If you're on the phone line, you have a question or a comment, hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. If you have a question or a comment in the chat room, you must log in as a user in the chat room in order to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a login name or username in Blog Talk, you can sign up for one in Blog Talk very quickly. Okay. So, Okofo Yaw, so-called Nat Turner, was born on October 2nd, so-called 1800, 12,800 in the European calendar. The year 1800, of course, we are in the midst of a 26,000-year Afuraitkaitnut great year cycle, hence the beginning of the years, beginning with 13,000. Of course, we do not track time based on the fictional cartoon character Jesus, who never existed of any race or in any form. So, he was born on October 2nd, and we refer to him through the title Okofo, which in Akan culture, Okun means war or battle. Okofo is one of the people, fo, who engages in war or battle or fight. Kun. So Okofo is a warrior. That is a title. And then Yaw is the name, the KRADA, the soul name of an individual born on Yawda, or the day da of the Obosom, the deity Yaw. Thursday is called Yawda or Yaw's Day in the Akan language. This is because in Akan culture, the 7-day week, which is something established by our people thousands of years ago, the whites and their offspring learned about the 7-day week from our people thousands of years ago. We have maintained the 7-day week in Akan culture over the course of thousands of years. Each day of the week is governed by the solar, lunar, or planetary body animates that day of the week and governs that day of the week. There are Obosom, forces in nature, spirits that animate the sun, moon, and various planets. Those spiritual forces animating these celestial bodies, so when these celestial bodies' energy impacts our planet on a daily basis in a cyclical fashion, then the spirit forces that animate these celestial bodies also affect the earth as well. And when we are born on a specific day, that is an indication to the people of the divinity that we were assigned to pre-incarnation. So, for example, Yawda is governed by the Obosom Yaw, the deity Yaw, who is called popularly Heru in ancient Kamit. He's also called Heru, Horu, or Soro in Akan culture as well. Soro comes from Horo, or Heru in ancient Kamit. The pronunciation in Akan today is Horo or Soro, but he also has the title Yaw. That is the day of Yaw. His planetary home, he operates at the core of the sun and core of the earth and so forth, but his planetary home, the largest planet, is the planet called Yaw. And therefore it is named after him. Of course, that it was corrupted by the whites and their offspring into Father Yaw or Father Yu or Yu Pater, or Jupiter, and so forth. But that means Jupiter was Yaw Pater or Father Yaw. That is corruption of a title of the divinity. So that is the day of the week governed by that planetary body and the spirit that animates, the major spirit that animates that planetary body, which is Nana Yaw, which is Heru, this Obosom. So when a male child is born on Yawda or the day of Yaw, that is an indication to the family that this child was assigned to this Obosom, this force in nature, pre-incarnation. meaning when they were an ancestral spirit in Asamando, the ancestral realm, and they were about to be drawn into a womb, to return into the womb for the first time in probably a couple of 100 years, before the spirit of the Afurakanu individual is drawn into the womb during copulation of their future parent. The spirit is drawn up to Nyamewa and Nyame, or Amenet and Amen, the great mother and great father, the supreme being. And the spirit is given a kra, a soul, a divine consciousness, which is the divinity, a force in nature that the supreme being directs to dwell with this person throughout the course of their lives and guide them throughout the course of their lives. And that spiritual force, that divinity, takes up residence in the head region of the spirit. Just like your physical body has a smaller entity, a smaller body in the head region that regulates all of the functions of the body, the brain, your spirit body has a smaller spiritual body force, a spirit's brain in the head region of the spirit. That is your ka, or kaet, as it's called in ancient Kamit, kra, krawa, in Akan, the Ori Inu in Yoruba, and Sebido and Vodun, the Chi Igbo, the deity, the soul, the divine consciousness, a conscious living entity that dwells in the head region that guides you throughout the course of your life. It is a servant of the Supreme Being, guiding you throughout the course of your life, and you experience that entity as a pull within your head towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order. And when you seek to go against divine order, you will feel that repulsion in your head pulling you away from thoughts, intentions, and actions that will place you in disorder or keep you mired in disorder. As we develop a relationship with that deity that dwells in the head region, that divinity, then our communication becomes more profound, more direct, more vivid, and we can see that entity and communicate directly with that entity. So that divinity is assigned to us, takes up residence in the head region, and now you're a spirit with a trawa, soul, a divine consciousness. And then once you're a whole entity, then you can be sent into a womb. And then 40 weeks later, approximately, you will be born into the world. But when, for example, when someone is born on Yawda, Thursday, that means before they entered into the womb, when their spirit went before Nyame wa Nyame, they were assigned to the Obosom, the great divinity Nana Yaw, Heru. And then one of the children of Nana Yaw, a force in nature, a miniature, quote-unquote, Yaw, a child of Nana Yaw, that force became the divinity that takes up residence in the head region of the person. So that divinity that person has a divinity in the head region, the ka, the soul, the divine consciousness. Your soul is not just the breath. Your soul is a deity. You have a spirit, but you also have a soul. You have a spirit, a divine living energy animating you. That is your ba, or baet, if female, ba, if male. And you have a soul, a divine consciousness. The ka, if you're male, or kaet, or female. The divine living energy animating you is your ba, or baet. But the deity dwelling in your head region is your ka and kaet, and you can communicate with that divinity. If you were born on a Thursday, a Yawda as a male, that means that you are assigned to Nana Yaw, Heru, pre-incarnation by the Supreme Being, and a child of Nana Yaw was sent to take up residence in your head region as your ka, as your soul, as your kra. And so now when you come into the world, when you are born, you manifest those characteristics because in your head region, from the time you're born, is a divinity guiding your thoughts, intentions, and actions, and you manifest those kinds of characteristics that are characteristics of the divinity Yaw, of that fiery divinity. So, Okofo Yaw, warrior Yaw, Nat Turner was born on Yawda on a Thursday. That is an indication, that is proof that he was assigned to that divinity pre-incarnation, and therefore the divinity makes sure that he comes out of the womb on his day to let the community know he was assigned to me pre-incarnation. So he's guided by the Obosom Yaw. That is the KRADA, the soul name. Now, let's say something quickly about just talking about Akan people in general. When we talk about hoodoo, the Akan religion in North America, popularly called Hoodoo. When we talked about the etymology of the name, we also talk about, and this is in our book, Hoodoo People. Was through Hoodoo that Akan people in North America were empowered to wage war against the white enslaved. This includes, for example, the New York Rebellion in 12,712, or so-called 1712, where 9 out of the 21 Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, African black people who were captured after the rebellion was over were found to have Akan Ancestry or soul name. That means the leaders of the rebellion, the 21 who were captured, 9 of those leaders had names like Kwesi and Kwame and Ama and Kojo and Yaw and so forth, showing that there was a large Akan presence amongst the leadership of that rebellion in New York in 12,712 or 1712. Numerous Akan people who escaped enslavement and established independent nations away from the plantations, such as the Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia and North Carolina, independent nations wherein our people lived in freedom and defended their freedom with their own militias intergenerationally. Akan people were part of that process. The great war waged by Okofo Yaw, warrior Yaw, Nat Turner in Southampton, Virginia, which resulted in the massacre of numerous white enslavers. Okofo Yaw, Nat Turner's paternal grandmother, was Akan. And then, of course, we also talked about the freedom movement of Nana Abena Araminta, so-called Harriet Tubman. She was Akan as well. Okofo Kwabena, warrior Kwabena, also called Talamake or Denmark VC. He was known to be Akan as well. So these are just examples of Akan people in North America waging war against the white enslavers, massacring the whites and their offspring, freeing our people under the power of ancestral religion, under the power of Hoodoo, the Akan ancestral religion. So let's get into this information. And we want to talk about the nature of Yaw and the nature of his characteristics, and talk about the life of Okofo Yaw, so-called Nat Turner, and show the connection between his culture, his ancestral spiritual culture, his ancestry, his inheritance from an Akan perspective. We're going to look at the document Akradin Bosom, talking about Yaw. And we're going to put that link. Okay, that link is in the chat room right now. So we're talking about the divinity Yaw, called Heru, called Shango in the Yoruba tradition, Hebioso or So in the Vodun tradition. So, as we said earlier, Yaw is the Obosom of the Ochin Nsoroma, or the planet Yaw. His Da or day is Yawda, Thursday. He is referred to as confrontational, aggressive, relentlessly challenging disorder. These are the characteristics of that energy conflict. Yaw is the Obosom of bravery and strength. Yaw is the Obosom who governs the kingship, rulership. Yaw governs the divine cardiovascular system, a governmental structure within Abodie creation, the divine body of Nyamewa Nyame, the supreme being, and thus the cardiovascular system within the Afuraitkaitnut black body. The Obosom Yaw, the deity Yaw, as we said, is called Shango in Yoruba, Hebioso or So in Ebe in Vodun, Heru, the son of Alsar, and Aset in ancient Khanit and Kamit. This is different than Heru Bedeti or Heru Behudet, which is Heru Bedat or Heru Benna, a different Heru divinity who is the son of Ra. You have Heru, son of Alsar and Aset, and Heru Bedet, the son of Ra. Heru Bedet or Heru Bedat in ancient Kemet and Kanat is called Benna in Akan culture. He governs the planet Benna, so-called Mars. People who are born on his day are called Kwa Benna. For example, Okofo Kwa Benna, so-called Denmark Visi, was a child of Benna. He was a Kwa Benna. You have, but that's different from Yaw, or Heru, son of Alsar and Aset. So, we showed the Medu to the hieroglyphs for Heru the term Heru, often spelled with the consonantal structure HR, as well as HRU, Heru, in late times, and in the Coptic dialect, which is a surviving form of the ancient language, Heru, Her, or Heru is often written Hor and Horu, and that's in Coptic. You'll see those vowels in the Coptic dialect. The Greeks corrupted Horu into Horus or Horus. The general term Hor or Horu means space, but also sky, heavens, what is above, on top. The related term Hori or Heri means chief, king, he who is above, leader. The feminine form is Herit or Horit. The medutu for these terms typically include the image or face, the head, as well as symbols representing the sky or the rectangular plate. So we show the hawk and so forth, which is the animal totem Achinebois of Heru or Horu in ancient Kemet. And we show the medutu for the title Hor, meaning up, above, and then Hori, he who is above, chief, king, leader, and so forth. He is over, authority, all of that. Hor or Horu in Coptic came to be pronounced Horu, becomes Horu, Shoru, 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 Soru, and Osoro, and So in Akan. So Hor and Horo become Soro and So in Akan in the tree language. So So and Soro in Akan, when you look in the Akan dictionary, means up, above, in the sky, in the heaven. So and Soro came from Ho and Horo, which later became Sho and Shoro, Ho, So and Soro, and so forth. The same terms meaning up, above, sky, heaven, and so forth, the same terms in Akan. One of the titles of the Obosom Yaw is thus Osoro in Akan, just like it's Horo in ancient Kemet. Osoro Nyansorana is the Obosom of thunder and lightning. It is a title of the Obosom Yaw in Akan. And of course, Soro or So, meaning the name of the Obosom, when you look in the Vodun tradition, in the Fon and Ewe languages, So or Hebioso, So of Hebie, but the term So is the name of the divinity there. So it's Yaw in Akan, Soro in Akan, So in Akan, Vodun. And then we also talk about Shango or Shongo, Songo. The So has come and go. This is what we're talking about. So it's the same divinity in the various languages. Now, when you look at the title Yaw, the general term Yaw in the Akan language means to shy, to scold, to attack. A Yaw also means pain or affliction. The term Yah has the same meaning, the feminine version. Yaw is the masculine version, and so forth. In the language of Kemet, the term exists with the same two meanings. Eshao, meaning to attack, to fight. Eshao, meaning pain or misery. So in both languages, in the Akan tree language, Yaw meaning to attack or fight, to show, to scold, to attack, and Yaw meaning pain or affliction. In ancient Kemet, in the Medusa, when we show the Medusa for that, Eshao means to attack, to fight. Eshao means pain or misery. That is important because one of the titles of Heru is Eshao, which means, and we show the Medusa for that, means fighter or combatant, and so forth. So you have Eshao, Heru. And when we show the Medusa for that, talking about the fighters, the fighting one, to fight, to do battle, to wage war, that term Yaw you find in the Medusa. And then we show some more linguistics here and show some more images from the hieroglyphic dictionary and so forth. And we show one of the titles, Heru, Eshao, Sebao, Heru, the destroyer of rebels. And then Heru, Eshai, Heru, the pillar, and so forth. Now, we go down a little bit further. We want to get into the nature of the divinity that forth in creation, Yaw, and what his functions are. He's the son of Asar and Aset. The Obosom Asar, called Awusi or Awusi in Akan, established civilized society, a social order rooted in the divine order of creation. Heru, the son of Asar, as Heri, king, upholds civilization. He takes the place of his father, Althar, and he upholds civilization as a ruler. He who is above, chief, leader, and so forth. He regulates the social order through relentlessly challenging disorder in all of its manifestations. When disorder arises in institutions, relationships, ritual practices, economic activity, etc., Yaw upholds the societal order by challenging the manifested disorder. To maintain, he corrects the wayward. When that which is wayward is beyond repair, beyond correction, the Obosom Benna steps in to eradicate, exterminate the purveyors of disorder. So then you have Benna and Yaw, Heru Behudet, and Heru, son of Althar and Alset, working together to exterminate the enemy. Yaw operates through the heart, the major organ of the cardiovascular system. The heart regulates order in the body by releasing oxygen-filled blood in a measured fashion. Yaw operates through the heart, or core of all created things. He is thus the core of the ODWIRA, the sun, the solar core of Asase Afu, the earth. The heart, Akoma, is the drummer in the body. In Akan culture, Ochere Ma, the drummer, is a regulator of order in society. Another term for drummer, however, is Ayan, which is related to Ya and Ya. The Ayan, or the Ochene drum, is sacred to Ya. So then what you have, of course, you have Soro, which means up, above, heaven, that is title also of Yao in Akan culture, or Soro, Nyan Sarana, which is the one who is above, the governor of thunder and lightning and so forth. Of course, you have Heru or Horu, Hor, in ancient Kemet, in the Coptic dialect, means he who is above and so forth. And it's spelled in a specific fashion. Then you have Her, Heru, Heri, meaning he who is above, but also the form of the hawk and so forth. And the animal totem of the hawk is the hunting bird, the warrior bird, and so forth. So Heri, in that capacity, is that hunting, attacking, regal bird, and so forth, warrior-type bird, fiery bird. But then you have a Chede in Akan, which means the one who attacks, hunts, and grasps and pierces and attacks and so forth. So you have that Chede, which comes from that Here or Heri in ancient Kemet. Then you have the term for the drum, Achene, which is related to Achere and Here in ancient Kemet. The term for drum, Achene, is another term for drum, Ayan, that is related to Yao, title of the deity, and Ochere, the title of the deity in the form of the hawk, which is the hunting, the raptor, the piercing, the attacking bird. So you have the titles of the drum, Ochere and Ayan, which are also related to the titles of the deity, Ochere and Yao, or Heri and Yao. The drummer in the body is the heart, the regulator of energy, regulator of the flow of divine energy to all parts of the body. This is why they say Heru governs the drum, Yao governs the drum, Shango is the master of the drum, Herioso is the master of the drum, but also divine kingship, also the chief, he is above, the leader, the ruler, and so forth. So we're showing even in the names and titles of the divinity, also related to the names and titles of the drum, also related to their function, in his function in creation. And then we show that connection there. We show an image of the human heart, show an image of the heart, Medut, the hieroglyph in ancient Kemet, and then we show an image of the Akan Achene, the drum, and one of the major drums in Akan culture is in the same shape of the heart, Medut, and the heart itself in ancient Kemet, and just the heart itself. And we show those images there. And then we have one of the titles of Heru is Heru Ami Abu, Heru who dwells within hearts. Now, Yao, with Heru, is an Obosom of bravery and strength. The term Akoko Duru defines one who is brave and has courage. The term is composed of Akoko, which means, and Duru, which means weight. It defines bravery or courage as manifested by one whose chest, Okunko, is heavy or has weight, Okoku Duro, or Okoko Duru. And sometimes they'll say Duro. That means someone who has a heavy chest. The chest has weight. Akokoduru means they have heart. They are strong. They, are courageous. They are fearless. This is one of the reasons why in Kamit, Heru Yaw has the title Heru Ami Abu Heru, who dwells within heart. Yaw is also called Heru Tawi, Heru, the opener of the sacred lands in Kamit. This is his title of his planet, which is later called Jupiter. It is called Heru Tawi. The whites and offspring, of course, call it Yaw Pater, or Father Yaw, a corruption of his title. It's the largest planet, the heaviest planet, Akokoduru. It is the king of the planet. It is his planetary home, while his solar home is the ODWIRA, which is the sun, operating through the core of the sun. And when you look in the planet Yaw, so-called Jupiter, you will see the large red spot, and that is akin, of course, to the eye of Heru. And in fact, it takes the exact same shape of the sacred Ucha Heru, or the eye of Heru, and we show the images for that. You'll find that in the story of Heru and Set removes Heru's eye in the battle. Heru's eye is healed by Heru and Tahuti, and then the Ucha, the eye, becomes a sacred talisman of healing. The eye of Heru, and people wear it on pendants, use it through talismanic rituals to heal people and so forth. That's been going on for thousands of years. So we get into some information dealing with Nana Yaw, the conflict between Heru and Set, the interaction between the will and the desire and so forth. And we get into some of that cosmology in the text. And we just want to show that, those divine functions of that divinity. Now, let's get into this life story of Okofo Yaw, Nat Turner, and we will show the connections between our great ancestor. He was born on Yawda. When you look at the dates, we were able to find out that he was born on Yawda, but of course, he manifested these characteristics. And as we read through his life story, we can understand and have a better understanding and perspective of what motivated him. It was the Obosom Yaw, warrior Yaw, the deity Heru, governing our great ancestor. He lived in harmony with that function in creation, streaming through him by that divinity. And of course, by his Nananom Nsamampo, his Akan Nsamampo, his Akan ancestresses and ancestors. So the whites and their offspring, of course, gloss trustery, put a number of things in trustery that are inaccurate because they want to taint his legacy, because they don't want us to honor our ancestor, our great Samai, great ancestor spirit, because we would take after his example. However, we don't follow the whites and offspring, we follow our own people. And he is one of our great Nsamampo, who inspires us to wage war and exterminate our enemies. Now, you look at many different sources dealing with his life, and you can find them all over the internet, of course. So we'll go through one of them. Born October 2nd, 12,800, so-called 1800, in Southampton County, Virginia. The week before Gabriel Prosser was hanged. So, Gabriel Prosser was a great Okofo warrior, waging war against the whites and their offspring, organizing thousands of our people to wage war and exterminate the whites and their offspring. A week he was caught, captured, and eventually hanged. The week before he was hanged, Okofo Yaw, so-called Nat Turner, was born in Virginia. And it's very important, the sequence of events. While still a young child, Okofo Yaw was overheard describing events that happened before he was born. This, along with his keen intelligence and other signs, marked him in the eyes of his people as a spiritualist, quote-unquote, prophet. This is the terminology that they would use, intended for some great purpose. Deeply religious man, he therefore studiously avoided mixing in society, wrapped himself, the whites and their offspring would say in mystery, but talking about spirituality, devoting his time to fasting and praying. So when you look at that, he was overheard as a young child describing events that took place before he was born. This is a returning Akan ancestor, a returning spirit coming into the world. He had a specific function, a specific mission to execute. He was a child of Nana Yaw, and he had that warrior, bravery, leader, relentlessly challenging disorder. That divine function was written into his pride, his soul, his divine consciousness. But then Yaw is also one, when we talk about the Ucha Heru, the eye of Heru, the one who has that divine insight, a divine fear. So when you look at the eye of Heru, when the eye of Heru is healed, it gives people divine insight. For example, when the eye of Heru was healed, it becomes a talisman of healing, but that eye is given to Asar to help to resurrect Asar and reconstitute and re-enliven Asar, so he resurrects and becomes, the ruler of the spirit realm. That eye is given to Asar to revivify him by Heru. So that eye of Heru is that divine insight, the capacity to see beyond the physical, to see spirits, to see the divinities and so forth. So many of our people are quote unquote born with a veil over their face. That means they can see the spirits, they are clairvoyant and so forth, they can communicate with ancestral spirits and divinities and so forth. Nana Yaw, Okofo Yaw, warrior Yaw, as a child of Heru, he had this insight, and it was commented upon by his family members and those who were connected to him. Even as a child, he was found describing events that had happened before he was born. He was communicating with Nsamako ancestral spirits, but then bringing that insight as a returning ancestral spirit back into the world. They say he was keenly intelligent, meaning he had that insight. He's able to see what's really going on, what undergirds events that are taking shape. And other signs, they say, marked him in the eyes of his people as a quote-unquote prophet, meaning one who can see taking place and unfolding and intended for some great purpose. Of course, Heru was born of Aset. He was born intended for some great purpose, to restore the throne and rulership of Asar and Aset, because they had been forced out of rulership by Set. Asar had been killed. Aset was a maroon, quote-unquote, in northern Kamit, in the swamps of northern Kamit, where she gave birth to Heru, but he was born to take back the throne of his father and restore order to the civilization. So he was born for a great purpose. And, of course, Okofo Yaw, the child of Nana Yaw, was born for a great purpose. They talk about when he ran away in 12,821, so-called 1821, he ran away from the overseer, but then he returned after 30 days because of a vision in which he said the spirit told him to return. Now, the whites and their offspring gloss that portion. They will say, well, the spirit told him to return to his master, as though, and they'll try to say he was involved in Christianity and Jesus told him to return to his master. But that's not what was happening. The spirit, the Nsamanfo, again, he was Akan. And as an Akan individual, he was communicating with his Akan Nananom Nsamanfo, spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. Also communicating with the Obosom that governed his head, Nana Yaw. And that divinity and the Nsamanfo tell him, go back to the plantation. Why? Because you're going to be a leader who leads the people in a fight or war waged against the whites and their offspring, and you're going to massacre these crackers on the plantation. So go back, organize. You don't just escape for yourself, but you're going to go back and get other people, and you're going to start a revolution, a resolution that shook the foundation of the so-called white slave system from that point even up until today, because people still fear when black people begin to organize and get together and speak to one another based on ancestral religion and what they're going to do with regards to the racism, the criminality of the whites and their offspring. They still fear us coming together amongst ourselves and excluding them from our meeting because of what took place back then. They still have that visceral reaction. What are the blacks about to plan? What are they going to do? So this is why he was directed by the spirit to return. Eventually, he was sold, and he had another vision. They say he saw lights in the sky and prayed to find out what they meant. Then they quote from him saying, while laboring in the field, I discovered drops of blood on the corn as though it were dew from heaven. And I communicated to many in the neighborhood, and then I found on the leaves in the woods hieroglyphic characters and numbers with the forms of men in different attitudes, portrayed in blood and representing the figures I had seen before in the heavens. So hieroglyphic characters he's seeing spiritually. He has seen these figures in the heavens, in the sky, the lights in the sky. The right eye of Heru is the sun, and the left eye of Heru is the moon. And he sees lights in the sky. He's the one with the Uchat Heru, the eye of Heru, and so forth. He has divine insight. He's clairvoyant. He can see. He saw these characters, these symbols in the sky. And then he saw blood on the corn and so forth. Of course, Yaw governs the cardiovascular system. So we're talking about the heart and the blood vessels and so forth. He sees blood on the corn, but then he sees these in the woods hieroglyphic characters and numbers with the form of men in different attitudes, portrayed in blood and representing the figures I had seen before in the heavens. So now we have a better understanding. Of course, we see these symbols from our ancient culture of ancient Khanat, but then also he is Akan. So, of course, they're going to use the term hieroglyphic symbols, sacred characters that they didn't have any, the whites and their offspring didn't have any understanding of. But what he's saying, of course, the sacred symbols of ancient Khanat and Kamit of his direct blood ancestry, as well as the Adinkra symbols of his direct blood Akan ancestry. When the whites and their offspring write about Okofo Yaw and Nat Turner, they write about this episode where he sees hieroglyphic signs and symbols, they don't know what he's saying. We know what he's saying because we know his ancestry. We know his heritage. He is one of our direct blood ancestors from our blood circle. So we know the symbols that the Obosom show us as Akan people. We know the symbols that they show us of the Adinkra forms, as well as those Adinkra, many of them you can find in the Medutu of ancient Kemet. So this is what he's saying. Of course, once again, is a continuity of our ancient ancestral culture all the way to the present day. They say on May 12th, 12,828 or 1828, Turner had his third vision. He says, I heard a loud noise in the heavens, and the Spirit instantly appeared to me and said the serpent was loosened. And then they throw in the word Christ, the whites and their offspring, and Christ had laid down the yoke he had borne for the sins of men, and that I should take it on and fight against the serpent, for the time was fast approaching, when the first should be last and the last should be first. Of course, the whites and their offspring throw that in there from the Bible. And by the signs in the heavens, that it would make known to me when I should commence the great work, and until the first sign appeared, I should conceal it from the knowledge of men. And on the appearance of the sign, I should arise and prepare myself and slay my enemies with their own weapons. So, the serpent is loosened. He needed to attack the serpent. This is representative of the whites and their offspring, the enslavers. Of course, when you see Heru in ancient Kemet, you see Heru attacking the great serpent called Apep, the spirit manifesting disorder. When he's trying to attack the ordered entities, trying to attack Ra and attack the other divinities and the people, and Heru wages war against the serpent and attacks the serpent. So he's seeing this serpent. He is Heru, he is Yaw. And he's seeing in the heavens this vision through his Uchak Heru, his eye of Heru, his eye of Yaw. He's seeing this serpent that represents that disorder. He's seeing himself attack that serpent. When he says the Spirit instantly appeared to me, the Spirit that appeared to him was Nana Yaw, but Nana Yaw, and talked about laying down the yoke he had borne for the sins of men, and that I should take it on and fight against the serpent. The time was fast approaching, and there will be another sign in the heavens to let him know when the time was to strike. So he was going to wait for that sign, and once he saw that sign, he said, I should arise and prepare myself and slay my enemies with their own weapons. And this is what the whites in our offspring feared, that when we get back involved in ancestral religion and our people are returning to ancestral religion in droves, in unprecedented numbers, when we are in alignment with our Obosom, the deities that govern us, that animate us, with our divine Kra, our soul, our divine consciousness, the Krawa, the deity dwelling in our head region, that divinity will show us what our function is, because written into that divinity is the nature of the function we are to execute, and will guide us on how to execute that function. And he says he was to conceal those visions until it was time to operate. The whites and their offspring will never know when the Obosom dwelling in your head region wakes you up one day and shows you that vision, and will tell you to conceal that vision until it is time to execute. And when it's time to execute, the Okra guides you to slay your enemies with their own weapons. The whites and their offspring cannot track that. They cannot stop that. They can't look into the head of every single Afuraitkaitnut person to determine when a deity is communicating with them, is going to tell them that particular morning to get up and massacre the whites and their offspring. So when you see recently, you see Vester Flanagan getting up one day, getting the whites and their offspring's own weapons, going on live television and blowing the cracker's brains out on live television. This is the spirit guiding him to slay the enemy with their own weapons. And then you see recently the shooter in Oregon, whose mother is black, and they've been concealing the fact that he has a black mother. At first they were trying to portray him as a white individual, a white supremacist and so forth. They were showing a lot of pictures of his quote-unquote father, his cracker father and so forth, but they would never show pictures of his mother because she's a black woman. This means there's a black person clearly incarnated from the side, the black mother's side of the family, one of her black ancestors who returned through her womb, even though she copulated with the cracker and forced her ancestor to come through her womb and have a biracial body. One of her Afurakanu ancestors comes through her womb, he grows up, and at some point the Obosom directs him, this is the time to slay your enemy. 9 black people were murdered by one of the whites and their offspring in North Carolina. So this brother comes and executes 9 crackers in Oregon, stands them up, asks them, what is your religion? They say Christianity. He blows their damn brains out and says, well, you'll be meeting your fake Jesus in just a second, and blows their damn brains out. You can't stop the Obosom from communicating with the people. The whites and their offspring have no control over that. This is why they fear the return of our people to ancestral religion, because they have no control. So those events, for example, with Harper and with Flanagan and so forth, and with Ismail Brinsley, who said he was going to put wings on cops today, and then went to New York and blew the cracker Asian and the cracker Hispanic brains out all over the seat. There was nothing they could do to stop that. He decided, he was shown that vision. The Obosom guided him to slay the enemy with their own weapons, to conceal the time and the function, conceal what he was going to do until it was time to act. This is exactly what was going on with Okofo Yaw, warrior Yaw, and he waged war effectively. At the beginning of the year, 12,830, so-called 1830, Okofo Yaw was moved to the home of Joseph Travis and so forth. They talk about some of that true story. And then in 12,831, in February 1831, there was an eclipse of the sun. And they said the sun took on a bluish-green color. Okofo Yaw took this to be the sign he had been promised and confided his plan to the 4 men he trusted most, who were connected with him, who were enslaved with him as well. Henry Hark, Nelson, and Sam. And they decided to hold the insurrection on the 4th of July and began planning a strategy. However, they had to postpone the action because Okofo Yaw had become ill. So they had planned it for the July 4th, quote-unquote, Independence Day, but then they had to postpone it and they pushed it back to August. So once that eclipse of the sun took place, the core of the sun is the solar home of Nana Yaw, the solar home of Heru. So when Nana Yaw communicated with his child Yaw on earth through that eclipse of the sun, and once the eclipse of the sun took place, Okofo Yaw saw that as the black hand covering the sun. It was time for the black man to take his control and the black woman to take his control over his situation. That was the sign from the Obosom, from the divinity. Understanding this from an Akan perspective, from an Akan spirit, an Akan individual who was operating at the time, now we understand what he was looking at, what he was analyzing, who he was communicating with, and why he took these signs in the heavens, up, above, Hor, Horu, Soro, up, above, Heri, he who is above, in the heavens. So he looked to the heavens and saw the signs in the heavens. He could see through the Uchak Heru, the insight, the divine eye, the capacity for that clairvoyance coming from Heru, through that divine eye and seeing what was in the heavens and the image of the sun and so forth, all of that taking place to show him what he needed to do. These were all communications from the Obosom that governs his pra, Nana Yaw. So on August 13th, there was an atmospheric disturbance. So the first eclipse of the sun, he saw the black hand covering the sun. And he knew that was the sign for the black man to take his control, the black woman to take their control. Then August 13th, there was an atmospheric disturbance, and this is the one in which the sun appeared bluish-green. This was the final sign, and a week later, on August 21st, Okofo Yaw and 6 of his men met in the woods to eat dinner and make their plans. At 2 o'clock that morning, they set out to the Travis household, where they killed the entire family as they lay sleeping. They continued on from house to house, killing all of the white people they encountered. That includes men, that includes women, that includes children, infants, because these are criminal spirits operating through tiny bodies, the same cracker spirits who are enslaving our people, torturing our people, dismembering our people, selling our people, reincarnate through the wombs of their white, perverse mothers, and they come out as infants, and they are criminal spirits, criminal entities, and deserve to be exterminated along with the adults. So that was important and intelligent wisdom. So they exterminated all of them, men, women, and every white person they encountered. His force eventually consisted of more than 40 freed individuals. We freed ourselves. They were no longer enslaved. They were free. As soon as they made the decision that they were going to wage war, they were instantaneously free. They were no longer enslaved. And he had an entourage of over 40 individuals. Many of them were on horseback. Then they talk about by midday, August 22nd, they marched towards the closest town. The word of the rebellion got out to the whites. They confronted them, and they began to wage war against the whites there. And then there was scattering, there was a skirmish and so forth. And at the end of the day, they'll say the rebels, but the warriors, the Akumfo, had stabbed, shot, and clubbed at least 55 white people to death. Many people say 60 or more. Many of the rebels, the warriors, scattered. Some of them were caught. They were caught and killed. Okofo Yaw, he wasn't caught until a number of weeks later. And he was finally caught. He was tried, and then he was hung. One of the crackers got a quote-unquote confession of Nat Turner. And then right after he was killed by the whites in their offspring, then the cracker published the confessions of Nat Turner. And of course, he changed the words of Nat Turner and included all kinds of nonsense in the story, changed the story around, included dissexuality, homosexuality coming from his own white perverse desires, trying to demonize Okofo Yaw, trying to demonize Nat Turner. The reason why the book was released was to demonize any black person who would wage war against the whites and their offspring, to promote him as insane, to promote him as a dissexual, to promote him as a fool, to promote him as, perverted, all this kind of nonsense. It was propaganda, one of those earliest forms of written, published propaganda against a black leader, because they feared that what he did would affect the people, and they understood, and it did affect the people, because it sent shockwaves, as we said, throughout the South and wherever people were enslaved, and into the North as well. And our people were rising up. There were hundreds of insurrections throughout the enslavement era, where thousands of our people freed themselves from enslavement on a regular basis, massacred the whites and their offspring, and forced them into the position of abolition and eventually into emancipation. The Civil War brought about through the Gullah Wars, when the black people were waging war against the United States Army, forcing them into that civil conflict, because they knew if they didn't engage in that war, then the blacks would overtake the whites and massacre them all. So they engaged in war. At the same time, they were forced into emancipation, to accept the position of emancipation. They didn't just give that up because they were magnanimous. They were forced to accept the reality that enslavement was over, because we were going to massacre all of them, or else that was it. So that's all that could take place. So the whites and their offspring were forced into that position. And again, they were forced into the position of talking about recolonizing portions of the continent like Sierra Leone and Liberia, resettling our people there, trying to get as many of the warriors and warrioresses out of the country as possible. And those who remained, their strategy, again, was to enslave the people with Christianity. And this is why they tried to weave stories of Christianity and say Nat Turner was a great preacher and he really loved the Bible and all sorts of nonsense. Okofo Yaw was Akan, and he was governed by Nana Yaw and guided by the Nana Noman Samafo. And Nana Yaw showed himself to Okofo Yaw, and the Nsamafo showed themselves to Okofo Yaw. And he was guided by them. He wasn't guided by the Bible. We know exactly who he was guided by, because we're guided by the exact same Obosom, and they share with us who he was guided by. And so does he, to his people in North America. He's a direct blood relative of Akan people in North America, as well as others as well. So they began that process of trying to force Christianity on the minds of our people, of Okofo Yaw, of Okofo Kwabena, Talamake, so-called Denmark Beast, of Gabriel Prophet, of these Harriet Tubman, Nana Abena Aramisa. We did a broadcast on her as well, because she's Akan as well. All these various individuals that are well known, as well as many who are unknown, who are waging war against the whites and their offspring, taking up arms against the whites and their offspring. You will see all the characteristics of the divinity Yaw manifest in the life and the unfolding of the life of Okofo Yaw. That bravery, that akoko duru, that heavy chest, that bravery, that power, seeing the signs in the heaven, the insight, the clairvoyance, being guided by the divinities, and waging war and leading an army. Just as Heru led an army against the followers of the Set to attack the serpent and so forth, you had Okofo Yaw leading an army against the criminals, the whites and their offspring, to attack, quote-unquote, the serpent, to bring an end to the rule of the whites and their offspring in this country hemisphere. So that was a great, movement in that direction. So we're going to looking in the chat room. And if you have a question or a comment on the phone line, you can hit the number 1. And of course, if you have a question or a comment in the chat room, you can interact in the chat room if you have a username. So one of the comments in the chat room, it says, just like they can't control nor intercept messages we share with one another via our okra, once we are preparing for achi sign of the mindset of our people. So that is true. And when the person who posted talked about echi sign. That is the term. Sign means to return, and echi means back. So the term we use, sign achi, to return, sign achi, back, echi sign, to revert. We utilize that term for reversion. Instead of ancestral religious conversion, to convert somebody into an ancestral religion, we talk about echi sign, which is reversion, returning back to our ancestral religion. You get converted when you're being converted into something you never were engaged in before. But when you engage and re-embrace your ancestral religion, which is born of your blood circles, we come into the world, as we talked about earlier. When you have a kra, a divinity assigned to you, to your spirit, pre-incarnation, and you're born into the world with a deity governing your head, and you're sent through a specific ancestral blood circle, a specific matriclan and patriclan governed by specific ancestresses and ancestors, with a specific culture and protocol and inclinations towards certain kinds of behaviors and repulsions from other kinds of behaviors. That means you have a way of life encoded within you. You're attracted to certain things and repelled by other things. That is a culture, a way of life. You have a specific function to execute in creation governed by a specific divinity. That means you have a religion. You have a divinity that governs you, a child and grandchild of the great mother and great father, and they have encoded within you your specific function, how you are to execute that function, when you are to execute that function, how you are to exercise that power you've been given to support that function, to fulfill that function. But we are born into the world with Nanasom, with ancestral religion. And we are born into the world with Amambre, ancestral culture. When we have gotten away from that because we've been brainwashed, we simply need to return to that Ucha Heru, that eye of Heru, that insight, and then engage in Echisai, which is reversion. To revert or verse means to turn, to revert, to turn back, to go back. Echisai, to revert to who we truly are, to our nature, to the pact that we made with Nyamewa, Nyame, the Supreme Being, pre-incarnation, the very purpose or life focus, the very function we were sent into the world to execute, our Nkra or our Nkrabia, that divine function we were given. We engage Echisai to return to our ancestral religious practices, and we are guided by the Obosom that governs our heads. We're guided by the Obosom that govern our patriclan and matriclan. We are guided by the Nananom Nsumanfo, our direct blood ancestresses and ancestors. So no one can give us an ancestral religion that was given to us by the Supreme Being before we got into the womb. It was shaped and nuanced for us by the Nananom Nsumanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our direct blood circle, and then we're born into the world with it. And if we're born into a situation, in a culture, in a family, in a region where our people are brainwashed with Christianity or Islam or Judaism, Hebrewism, and other kinds of nonsense, then when we go internal, the Obosom begins to guide us back towards reality. Okofo Yaw was not born in a situation where everybody was engaged in ancestral religion and speaking their traditional languages and everything else. Born on a plantation, forced into enslavement, born into enslavement. But when the Obosom began to show him what was going on, then he went and embraced what the Obosom showed him, and instantaneously he had engaged the process of Echisai, or reversion, reverting to that ancestral culture. When you align yourself with the forces in creation, the divine forces in creation, you're engaged in ancestral religion. And when you maintain that alignment, you're engaged in ancestral religion. And when you follow the dictates of the Nsamanfo, your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, you are engaged in Amamre ancestral culture. So we learn it directly from them, just as he did. And we have that capacity and responsibility to engage in the same process wherever we find ourselves in the Western Hemisphere. Whether we're born into a situation or not, where there are people practicing the culture or speaking the language, which most of our people are not, we listen to our Okra, the soul, the divine consciousness, the divinity in our head region. We get guidance from that. When they say he fasted and prayed, simply meaning naturally, instinctively, very often when we're trying to find out something, the first thing we do is we fast. We stop eating. We get all the food out of our system. We want to be an open channel without expending any energy in any other direction, even with regard to eating, so that we can focus. So we fast, and when they say he fasted and prayed, that means he for a while and attuned to his own akra, attuned to Inyame wa Inyame, attuned to the Obosom, attuned to the Nananom and Samafo, and got his direction. And when we engage that process, we are instantaneously right back, reverted, etchy-signed, right back into our ancestral religion that we have been engaged in for thousands of years. And once we get back there, we engage the process of the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That is what Nanasom or Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, African ancestral religion is, no matter what form it takes. It is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. Those are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. That means through ritual, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we repel those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to repel, to reject, to hate, to repulse, in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and therefore realign ourselves with divine order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. And when he goes through purification, we say ODWIRA, purification operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring order. So he engaged in Jida, purification. He fasted, cleansed his body, became an open channel so that he can operationalize Nanasom, so he could attune to the Obosom, the forces of nature, attune to the Nananom and Samafo, incorporate law when they showed him what they needed to show him, and to restore balance, to realign himself with that ritual practice, ritual balance. He incorporated law and restored balance to his life. And when he engaged that process, he knew who and what to accept and who and what to reject. Ancestral religious culture is the divine acceptance, the law or love of order, and the divine hate of disorder. Mara Nechi, divine law, love, and divine hate, the expansive and contractive poles of order. We incorporate that which is harmonious with divine order, and we reject or destroy, repulse, hate, repel, exterminate that which is out of harmony with divine order. We breathe in nutrients so that we can be strengthened, take in nutrients, breathe in air and nutrients and so forth, and consume nutrients and so forth, and utilize that to energize ourselves and operate and fuel. But then we expel toxins, expel bacteria, expel those things that will otherwise take us down and cause us to collapse. So we incorporate law and restore balance by rejecting disorder. This is ancestral culture, the acceptance, the divine acceptance, the law or love of order, and the divine rejection, the divine hate of disorder and its purveyor. Okofo Yaw, warrior Yaw, engaged that process, and it was through that process of purification and Nanasom, operationalizing Nanasom ancestral religion, that he was able to wage war and shake the foundation of the entire nation of the whites and their offspring in North America, their entire system. Him, in concert with other Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people engaged in the same process just before Gabriel Prosser was hanged, then later on Denmark Vesey's rebellion, and so forth. All these different things were happening around the same time in the same area, Okumfo after Okumfo after Okumfo, and so forth. So the whites and their offspring began to fear what was taking place, and they had no other choice to move to the position of abolition and emancipation. Okay, we have another comment in the chat room. In this day and time, the question is, why are a lot of Black people offended by present revolutions taken by the bravery of our people in some parts of this country? Of the white crackers, after all of our history, a lot of them appear to be ashamed of such bravery, unlike our people during enslavement. And yes, some of our people, of course, are brainwashed with that Christianity that was forced on our people back then. And some of our people, of course, are brainwashed by that now because they fear the whites and their offspring. They fear the whites and their offspring because they're consumed by self-hatred. But once people overcome that, when they see the Spirit move our young men and young women, as well as older men and older women, to rise up one day and go to war against the whites and their offspring and execute them on the spot, that is the Nsamanfo, their direct blood ancestresses and ancestors guiding them. That is the Obosom guiding them. And of course, the whites and their offspring cannot stop that kind of guidance. And as we said in the previous broadcast, these things will simply begin to expand and duplicate themselves and replicate themselves exponentially, and it's only going to expand. That event with Vester Flanagan redeeming himself by executing the crackers on live TV, Person Harper waging war against the whites and their offspring in Oregon and executing those 9 in replacement for the 9 of our people who were executed in North Carolina. When you have the brother Brinsley executing the 2 cracker cops and so forth, taking the lives of these criminals who have been choking our people to death and gunning our people down and everything else, this will only increase exponentially. These kinds of events will begin to happen on a more regular basis, not just once every few months. That kind of event can happen every single day. 1,000 of those events can happen in the same day, all over the country. And then the next day, another 1,000 events can happen, because the Obosom can communicate with thousands, millions of our people. And none of these crackers can stop that communication because they don't know when it's going to happen. They didn't know when Okofo Yaw was going to get up. The Obosom told him to conceal what he was going to do, so he went about his regular business. Recall that he escaped from the plantation. But then the Obosom and Nsamafo told him, go back to the plantation, because they knew they wanted him to liberate everybody from the plantation, not just himself, but go back and liberate everybody. But before you engage that process of waging war and slaying the enemies with their own weapons, you're going to conceal it until we show you a sign. And the sign will be in the quote-unquote heaven, in the osoro, in the horo, in the heavenly realm, and so forth. So you conceal. So he's working on the plantation. Nobody knows what's in his crop, his soul, his divine consciousness. Nobody knows what is in his akoma, what is in his heart, because he's doing what everybody else is doing. But as soon as they show him that sign and know it was time to move, then he moves. So you have black people working in all fields of endeavor all across the country. Nobody knows what's in their heart. They never waged war against anybody from the time they were children up until the time they were adults. They have no track record of ever waging war against anyone. They have no track record of quote-unquote depression or anxiety disorder or having suicide notes and all this other nonsense with these little fake manifestos that the crackers throw up all of a sudden, which of course our people are not putting manifestos out. We don't do that. They don't have any evidence of any of that. All the people know is that they're just regular people who went to school and had good relationships with their families and friends and got a job and worked along with everybody else in the job doing everything that everybody else does. But then all of a sudden when the Obosom tell them to move, they're going to move. And they do move. When the Obosom tell them to conceal their plans until they see a sign, then they conceal their plans and do everything that they would normally do just like everyone else until they see that sign. When they see that sign, then they move and execute. And that can happen every single day. Thousands of people can engage that process in the 50 states every single day, and the cracker cannot stop that. So, we have a call on the phone line. Michelle on the phone line, number 5808. You had a question or comment?
Michelle, can you hear me?
Yes, Michelle, what's up?
Oh, pardon me. To derive what I by nature, and most recently the storms in South Carolina And we hear about sinkholes in Florida shortly after the Trayvon Martin assassination. Maybe even Hurricane Katrina. But, we're talking about rebellions by our ancestors led by their insurmountful and the nature spirits that guide their heads. So what would you say is behind these rebellions that happen in the earth, in nature?
Well, this is what we would say, and that's a good question, because sometimes that kind of information would come up when the Obosom operates through nature and operates through, storms and things like that. When it's really them operating, it will be targeted, whether it was through lightning striking a building or a plant or a hospital, something like that, burning it up, or a large fire burning up a whole section of a town or something like that, a wildfire, and the crackers can't stop the fire, like somewhere in a place like California.
On the West Coast.
These fires they can't stop in certain places, or a specific tornado. Nana Ya, Obosom Yaw, called Wachet in ancient Kemet, and Ya in Akan, and Ya in the Yoruba tradition, and so forth. Right, destroying a whole, small city or region and so forth, or even certain floods and things like that. The Obosom are behind those things. They are targeted, and they hit the enemy. They don't attack our people. So many people you see all over the internet start reading into, the floods in South Carolina, or even with, quote-unquote, Hurricane Katrina. They would say, well, that was the Obosom. But our people suffered at a greater rate than even whites and their offspring of those things. For example, Hurricane Katrina, of course, that had nothing to do with the flooding. So the hurricane had already passed through New Orleans, and it was gone. And the day afterwards, the 5th ward the 9th ward was dropped. Then the whites and their offspring bombed the levees deliberately to flood the entire 9th ward, and then they blamed it on the hurricane. So there were black people, there were Yoruba priests and priestesses talking about that was Yemonja and Olokun coming back to, prove to the white man that he couldn't attack us down in New Orleans and so forth. Those were crackers who bombed the levees, and these Negro priests and priestesses doing these fake divinations, talking about it was the deities, making themselves look ridiculous, because all those black people were suffering. And, of course, it was all according to a plan. The crackers decided to bomb the levees so that they could regentrify the area, and that's exactly what took place. Right. And most of those black people were not able to return, and there's still black people today who still have not returned to New Orleans 10 years later. And the cracker, Obama, goes down there for the 10th anniversary of their murder and their displacement and talk about, well, we have a long way to go, but New Orleans is coming back. And they start talking about all the new businesses and everything else. That was all according to plan, planned years in advance. And then when you see something like what's taking place in South Carolina, black people are suffering at untold numbers. This is happening. This is not an act of the Obosom, the Orisha, and so forth that are flooding and destroying the homes of black people who are suffering at a greater rate than the whites and their offspring are. So we must understand that when the Obosom operate, they're attacking the actual target. You'll see a tornado hit and destroy an entire town, and it's a small white town, and everybody is wiped out. All their houses are destroyed. None of our people suffer, the damage, unless it was, a Negro who was, laid up with crackers, and the Obosom kept coming in and separating them, and they refused. And they were against the larger black community, and they get caught up in that, which they need to be caught up in that. But when the Obosom operates, it's a targeted event. When any, a quote-unquote natural disaster, quote-unquote, or just a weather event, or even when the whites and offspring influence, hurricanes and things like that with their little,
that is possible.
Yeah, they do that kind of, for example, like in Haiti, the whites and their offspring will decimate, explosives by fault lines create earthquake and then say, well, it was a natural disaster. They'll do it in Haiti like they did a number of years ago. And then immediately we already know what the script is. Once they detonate the explosives along the fault line, cause the fault line to, become active, it creates a huge, effect and a so-called earthquake, which was really, in that sense, a man-made, man-influenced earthquake. Then the cracker will immediately say, well, the reason why the earthquake hit Haiti is because they practiced voodoo. And, they're involved in devil worship, and brainwashed Negroes would be scared of voodoo, and they're like, man, you see what happened in Haiti? You see all these Negroes running around talking about, well, they do practice voodoo. And they did the same thing in New Orleans. The hurricane went by. The day after, the land was dry. And then after that, the crackers bombed the levees, flooded the whole area, and then all the politicians and pastors and everything else, the crackers came out and said, well, they openly practiced voodoo in New Orleans, and that's why God destroyed them with a hurricane. And then brainwashed Negroes would jump in and say that. But then you have other brainwashed Negroes like Afurakanu talking about, Allah, this white homosexual Arab, Fard Muhammad, who's supposed to be sitting up in a fictional spaceship right now, is the one that caused the flooding in South Carolina, or, every time it rains, all of a sudden that's the fictional character Allah causing a weather pattern because people aren't listening to Farrakhan. That kind of idiocy, our people jump on because we're brainwashed, we're emotional, we want something to happen, so anytime something happens and we see something, a weather event happen, we wish that the Obosom were attacking the crackers in that particular instance. So we'll just forget about the fact that all these black people are suffering, and then we'll say, we'll see what the deities did, because we're just jumping on the bandwagon, and crackers promote that. When the Obosom makes something happen, it targets the enemy, and we don't suffer from that. So that's how you can tell when what's really taking place. Even for people, if they're not, clairvoyant and things like that, connecting with the Obosom on that level yet, even though you have the capacity to do that, you'll know the difference between when the Obosom are operating and these natural, quote-unquote, disasters happen, and they're destroying crackers and, epidemics of disease hitting cracker neighborhoods and not affecting black neighborhoods and so forth, then you know if the Obosom are behind that.
Okay. All right, thank you for that clarification. I've never heard that perspective before.
Medase, we appreciate the call.
Medase.
Okay. So now we have some comments in the chat room real quick. And just want to make sure that wasn't any questions there. And by the way, we did one of our Ma'al Heru webcasts right around the time the so-called Hurricane Katrina happened. We did a Ma'al Heru webcast, which is on our Ma'al Heru page on our website, talking about what really happened in New Orleans, proving, of course, that the crackers bombed the levees to deliberately flood the Ninth Ward and then try to blame it on voodoo and so forth. They had done the same thing decades before, like 70-plus years before. They had bombed the levees in the same area to flood the Ninth Ward, the same area before, so that the business owners, the waters wouldn't attack their areas or hit their areas. It would hit the ward where mostly black people live, so they could engage that regentrification process. So they did the same thing once again in 10 years ago. So we did a webcast detailing that information. And of course, people can study information. For example, when we were looking at certain hurricanes and so forth, and the White Snarl Spring calling certain things natural disasters, we asked the Obosom, are the White Snarl Spring influencing specific things? The Obosom said the whites and their offspring will manipulate or bend the jet stream. Of course, the jet stream is the stream of air moving around, the earth, and when you're watching the news and the weather and so forth, they say, well, the jet stream is moving in this specific direction. So as the jet stream is constantly moving around the planet and so forth, If you can put a slight dent or bend the jet stream, then you can redirect some of that flow of air into a certain direction, and that will create the effect of what appears to be a hurricane. And it's no different than martial arts. When somebody's very big and strong and they swing at you, if you're not strong enough to stop their punch, you don't have to stop their punch. You don't have to be stronger than them. If you simply move out of the way and simply push their arm and divert their punch, their momentum will swing them totally in a different direction. So the Samampo told us that the whites in their offspring will project electromagnetic energy into the jet stream to help bend a portion, quote unquote, of the jet stream to create the effect of the appearance of what will appear to be a hurricane. So once they told us that, we got online and we started doing some research. And what we found was the whites in our offspring, through HAARP and through other, devices, will project electromagnetic waves. They have football field sizes of, dishes out there directed directly towards the jet stream, constantly projecting electromagnetic waves towards the jet stream to bend the jet stream. And when they angle it properly and so forth and use the proper coordinates, they can direct when a portion of the air flowing through will simply, quote unquote, bend and create the effect of a hurricane. But it's really not a hurricane. It's just the same air that's circulating around the planet. A portion of it gets diverted, and then it hits a specific area, and they can pinpoint that specific area. In a similar sense, when they drop dry ice in the clouds because they need it to rain, because they want their crops, their crops are suffering, and they need some moisture, so they drop some dry ice in the clouds to make it rain and so forth. The whites in their offspring will do whatever they can to affect certain things on a very minute level with regard to the weather, but make it appear that this is just a weather occurrence. But in reality, it's not a weather occurrence. It's just a very small tweak of a very small area of the jet stream or certain clouds and so forth. And that's been done for decades. And anybody can do that kind of just basic research and see what they're engaged in. And when you see the detail to which they, explain these different things, there are people sitting down 24/7 trying to figure out ways to manipulate the weather. So they have, these military exercises, these military programs where they have scientists sitting down trying to figure out what can we do to project, just no different than putting a satellite up that's orbiting the planet. Now, if you can put a satellite that's orbiting the planet and sending communications back and forth, what about when you have a football field full of, large dishes where you're constantly projecting electromagnetic waves into the jet stream? Of course, the Earth is surrounded by the magnetosphere. The two poles and so forth, the magnetosphere, the magnetic field, surrounding Earth, and we're all bathed in that electromagnetic field. We have our own magnetosphere and so forth. If you can affect a little dent in the magnetosphere, then that also affects the jet stream, the movement of the jet stream. You don't have to affect the entire Earth. You don't have to affect the entire city. You don't have to affect a large region. A slight dent will cause major problems. If you're driving down the street at 60 miles per hour and you simply take your pinky finger or if you're going 100 miles per hour and you simply take your pinky finger and move your steering wheel just slightly to the left, then your car will veer off the road and crash into something. It didn't take you picking up the car and throwing it. You didn't have to have the power to move the car and throw it with all the velocity and all of that. All you needed was the car with its own power, its own velocity, under its own movement. It's moving at a high speed, and all you need to do is bend it a little bit. All you need to do is move that steering wheel slightly. If you're going at 2 miles per hour and you turn the steering wheel very slightly with your pinky finger, then the car would barely move to the left, and it wouldn't move hardly at all. It wouldn't make any big deal because you're just going 2 miles per hour. But if you're going 102 miles per hour and you turn the steering wheel slightly to the left with your pinky finger, that will cause all kinds of damage and possibly death, because the car will slam and veer off the road immediately and slam into whatever is there. In the same fashion, all they need to do is simply tweak and put a little dent in the magnetosphere by projecting electromagnetic energy, and this is what they're doing. So you can see images of the fields of, dishes out, in their fields and so forth. Why are they projecting all these electromagnetic waves directly towards the magnetosphere? What effect does that have on the ozone layer? What effect does that have on the magnetosphere? What effect does that have on the jet stream? Those are things that they've already dealt with. So it's nothing magical. It has nothing to do with, some great deal of power or spirituality or even a great deal of technology. Bending the jet stream is bending the jet stream. It's no different than one magnet and another magnet on a table, and when you push them and they have the same polarity spacing, they will repel one another without touch. So you can move something with electromagnetic energy. That's just a magnet. You can do that yourself. So if you can do that with a little magnet, or you get a huge magnet and do that in your house, but then what if you decide, well, I'm going to build, 1,000 super magnets and dishes and project that electromagnetic energy into the atmosphere? What is that going to do to the magnetosphere? And when the jet stream is moving past that area and you shoot electromagnetic waves directly into the magnetosphere and the jet stream, what kind of bend, what little niche are you going to put in the jet stream? Because all it takes is that little niche, that little pinky finger movement to cause all kinds of destruction. It's not magical, it's not super, it's not brilliant, it's none of that. It's very simple, and this is what they've been engaged in. So we understand what's really taking place. Okay, so I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything there. In the chat room. Okay. And that's something anybody can research, that information, just basic information about physics and about electromagnetic energy, and you can read about HAARP and read about other things as well. But you can see how those things unfold just by studying, engineering and studying electronics and things like that. And they just took it to a higher level because they have the resources to invest in larger machinery. That's all it is. No different than somebody, building a little car. But then if you have a great deal of resources, then you can spend a great deal of time and build something much greater. You can build an airplane. You have more resources. You can spend all your time and all your resources and build a space shuttle and send the space shuttle up into, outer space. So it's just simply taking time and having resources and focusing on that specific objective, and that's what they do. So it's much easier to just project electromagnetic waves into the magnetosphere and just constantly send them, no different than sending a signal from a TV station or a tower. You build the towers for the cell phones, and then somebody in America can get on their little phone, talk, and the signal goes to the tower, then it goes across, and then someone in China can hear you speaking. It's much easier for them to create that kind of technology than it is to create a space shuttle and send something out in space and space station and all of that. It's much easier just to build a bunch of dishes, point them towards the sky, and just hit the switch and send some electromagnetic waves constantly into the magnetosphere. It's much easier for them to do that. And then they just simply need to direct the coordinates so they can manipulate where the niche is going to cause a problem and a quote-unquote weather event. So it's just that simple. All right, so it's almost 11:30, so we're going to close out here. Again, for individuals who came on a little bit later, we are having our Hoodoo Nation Festival in Washington, D.C. It's an all-day event on October 17th, which is next week. When you go to the Hoodoo Mind page, and we'll put that link in the chat room one more time. It is a free event for Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people only. We will have a marketplace event, a number of different vendors with natural products, whether it's soaps, herbs, books, clothing, natural live foods, and so forth. We also will have presenters. We will be doing the presentation on Hoodoo, the Akan Ancestry religion in North America. From Al-Makesi to Houthi, we will be talking about How to Make a Negro Christian, which is the book that he published proving that the whites in our spring forced Christianity on our people to brainwash our people, how they did it, when they did it, why they did it, and the methods that they used to brainwash our people. They called it the religious instruction of the Negro in the 1800s, so-called 1800s, as a result, as an outgrowth of their response, their panicked response to the events surrounding the Okofo Yaw War, so-called Nat Turner rebellion, and so forth, as well as others. We'll be talking about that. He's also one of the vendors who will be selling his book. We have artists who will be selling their artwork and so forth. We also have Ama Asase Ajay of Asase Hills, talking about natural medicine, traditional medicine, the tinctures that she has created to heal people and so forth, and the success that she has had with that, being guided by her Insamafo and Obosom on how to create these healing compounds from plant life and mineral life and so forth, and oils and so forth, to heal our people of various diseases and so forth. So when you go to the page, the Hoodoo Mind page on our website, you'll see the flyer. We're going to be adding more and more information, so constantly look for the information. We will be publishing the Hoodoo Mind Journal, which will be given out to all the people who come to the event. We will also have an ebook version of that journal online. If you would like to place an ad in the journal, tomorrow, October 9th, is the deadline to submit your JPEG file so we can include it in the journal, because that is the deadline. We only have a few days left to get that printing done, so we have to have it in by October 9th, at the end of the day, October 9th. So, again, the 1/4 page ad is $25, the half-page ad is $35, and the full-page ad is $50. And we also have 2 spaces left for vending, so if you would like a table, we supply the table with 2 chairs. That is $25 for the table for all day. So we will be posting the itinerary. We will be posting more information about the vendors and everything else and the program on the page. But the information, the basic information, is already on the page. 3-page flyers on the page. You can download that PDF and share it. We also have a Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival page on Facebook, and you can deal with that as well. You can go to that page, like that page, and share that page with your people as well. If you would like to support the work that we are doing, and of course it's a free event and the presenters are presenting for free, and then we also need to help with one or more of our presenters who are coming from out of town so they can cover their travel expenses. So if you'd like to assist us in that process, any purchase of our books, our 16 books, is always helpful in that process. Go to our publications page. Our books range between $8 and $11. All the various books that we have published: Afuraitkaitnut, The Origin of the Term Africa, Moor Means Dead, Kukutuntum, The Ancestral Jurisdiction, where we show the cosmological foundation of creation, as well as the fact that Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Yahweh, Allah, all these characters are fictional and never existed, and how they were manufactured. We have Okofo Yaw proving that bisexuality, homosexuality was never accepted in ancient Kemet. So we give the proper translations of those texts that the whites in our spring seek to use falsely to support bisexuality, which they do not at all. So we prove that in detail. We have Oberima Afurakanu Manhood. We have a number of different books that we have published, 16 books. They range between $8 and $11. Any order of 10 books or more is automatically 30% off. So you have that option as well. So any purchase of our books assists us in the work that we are doing, these free workshops and events and so forth. And then, of course, any donation, you can make a donation on our publications page as well. And any donation of $15 or more, we will send you a book, one or more books, in return for your donation. So if you would like to assist us, we do need that assistance to help with the expenses for the event. Of course, we don't charge for any of our events, whether we're holding this event or when we do presentations out of state. As a matter of fact, we do have a presentation coming up. We will be in New Jersey with the New Jersey Nanasom Feku Ancestral Religion Study Group in New Jersey this Saturday, October 10th. You can see that notification on Facebook for the New Jersey Feku Ancestral Religion Study Group. October 10th, we'll be there. Of course, October 17th, we are having our event here. November 7th, we will be in Montgomery, Alabama. We'll be sending out the information for that. So no matter where we go, we never charge for an admissions fee for people to come to our presentations, our workshops, and we do not charge a speaker's fee for organizers of our events. So in order to cover our costs, when you support the books or you make a donation, which we will send you a book, one or more books anyway for the donation, that is how we are able to cover expenses. So if you support the work that we are doing, please go to the Nhoma page, the publications page. You can go now, ojidafo.com/Nhoma, NHOMA.html, to support the work that we are doing. You can do that on the publications page as well as on the Hoodoo Mind page. We have the donation button there, as well as the link to the publications page there as well. So, again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning in to this special broadcast of Ojida and Yebeshia Bio. We will meet again. That's it.